Imagine being locked in a dark room for 50 years. You are blind. You're deaf. You are billions of miles from the nearest human being. You are Voyager 1, a tiny machine the size of a car drifting through the unimaginable darkness of space, 14.5 billion miles from Earth. Launched in 1977, this probe was only meant to last 5 years. It was supposed to die quietly in the dark. But nearly 50 years later, Voyager is not only alive, it is defying the odds. Recently, however, the story has changed. It's no longer just a story of survival. Something bizarre is happening out there. Voyager is sending back signals, patterns, pulses, and data that don't make sense. It's heating up. It's changing course on its own, and it's processing data in ways its 1970s computers physically cannot do. Could Voyager have found something in the void between stars? Or even more chilling, has something out there found Voyager? Buckle up, because the answer might be terrifying. To understand why this is impossible, we have to look at what Voyager actually is. The story begins not with space flight, but with a rare cosmic alignment. In the early 1970s, astronomers realized that Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune were about to align in a way that occurs only once every 175 years. This was the Grand Tour, a chance to visit 4 planets in a single mission using gravity assists. The spacecraft they built were marvels of 1970s engineering, but by today's standards, they are fossils. Each probe carried 11 scientific instruments and was powered by RTGs, nuclear batteries converting heat from decaying plutonium into electricity. But here is the kicker. The onboard computer has about 68 kilobytes of memory. That is less than what it takes to store a single low-quality digital photo today. Engineers designed these systems to function flawlessly without repair, building in backups and self-diagnosis tools, but they never designed them for this. On September 5, 1977, Voyager 1 launched, riding a Titan III Centaur rocket into history. Few could have imagined that nearly half a century later, it would still be making headlines. Not for what it was finding, but for what might have found it. For decades, Voyager 1 was the champion of the solar system. It revealed Jupiter's raging storms and Io's volcanoes. It showed us the braided rings of Saturn and the methane atmosphere of Titan. Then in 1990, it took the famous pale blue dot image, turning Earth into a pixel in a sunbeam before its cameras were turned off forever to save power. But the real mystery began when it left home. Scientists weren't sure where our solar system ended. They knew about the heliosphere, a protective bubble created by the sun, but they didn't know what lay beyond. In 2012, Voyager 1 crossed the heliopause. It officially entered interstellar space. Scientists expected this region to be quiet, uniform, and predictable. They were wrong. Voyager discovered a dynamic environment full of surprises. The plasma was superheated and far denser than predicted. Cosmic rays bombarded the ship from all directions. Most intriguingly, it detected tsunami waves, periodic oscillations in the plasma, suggesting interstellar space was active and structured. At first, physics could explain this, but by 2017, the data became harder to explain. The waves weren't fading. They were showing mathematical relationships and patterns that hinted at something complex. Something was out there in the void, and Voyager was sailing right into it. The first sign that Voyager was losing its mind or gaining a new one appeared in late 2017. Engineers at NASA noticed that the ACS, the system that keeps the antenna pointed at Earth, was sending back contradictory info. The telemetry data said the antenna was pointing in the wrong direction, a direction that would make communication impossible. Yet, the signal remained clear and strong. One engineer described it as getting a phone call from someone claiming to be in Antarctica while your caller ID showed they were calling from next door. It was as if the spacecraft was in 2 places at once. They tried to diagnose the problem, but the anomaly persisted. Voyager was communicating correctly while reporting its position incorrectly. Then by 2023, the weirdness escalated. The plasma wave instrument started detecting rhythmic patterns unlike anything seen before. These weren't random. They were distinct oscillations with precise frequencies appearing for hours, disappearing, and returning. It was as if Voyager was passing through structured regions of space, perhaps even the cosmic web that connects galaxies. But nothing natural should create structured signals lasting for months. Were these the first whispers of something else? If the data patterns were strange, what happened in 2024 was physically alarming. The spacecraft's temperature sensors, which had been dormant for years and should have read near absolute zero, woke up. They began showing rhythmic spikes. Every 4.88 hours, the external sensor array would warm by nearly 30 degrees, then cool back down. This cycle repeated with such precision that it could only be the result of external energy input. Even more terrifying, these heat pulses matched the rhythm of the plasma waves detected months earlier. Whatever was out, there wasn't just waving at Voyager, it was touching it. NASA panicked. These spikes threatened to fry the aging systems. But then came the paradox. Despite the thermal stress, Voyager's power consumption improved. The spacecraft began operating more efficiently than its age should allow. It was like watching an old car overheat while simultaneously getting better gas mileage. Something was stressing the ship, but something was also helping it compensate, optimizing its 1970s energy grid in ways it was never programmed to do. But the temperature anomalies were just the warm-up act. What happened next would challenge physics itself. For 47 years, Voyager 1 followed a path dictated by gravity and physics. NASA could predict its location years in advance. But in mid-2024, the math stopped working. Voyager began to drift off course. At first, it was subtle, just a few kilometers, but by early 2025, it was hundreds of kilometers off. And the scary part, it wasn't random. It wasn't a thruster malfunction spinning it out of control. One engineer described it as watching a sailboat tack against the wind. The spacecraft was making tiny, deliberate course corrections. The problem is Voyager can't do that. Its thrusters are only used for orientation, not for navigation like this. It doesn't have the fuel or the brain to steer itself. Yet, it was being gently pulled toward a specific point in empty space, adjusting its trajectory like a ship answering a captain's wheel. NASA tried to fight back. Engineers sent commands to fire thrusters in the opposite direction to correct the drift. Voyager received the commands. It acknowledged them, but it didn't obey. The trajectory continued to change, as if something was overriding NASA's instructions. By late 2025, the destination became clear. Voyager was being redirected toward a region of space that on our charts contains absolutely nothing, just void. Desperate to understand what the probe was seeing, NASA made a Hail Mary play. They decided to reactivate Voyager's camera system. These cameras have been shut down for 35 years. They were frozen blocks of metal in the dark. No one expected them to work, but 21 hours later, Voyager answered. The response stunned the control room. Not only did the camera turn on using significantly less power than the specs required, but the image it sent back wasn't a photo. Voyager sent a data visualization, a complex spiraling pattern of light and dark rings looking almost like a fingerprint or a tree trunk. Analysts realized this was a visual representation of the plasma wave data it had been collecting. Here is why that is terrifying. Voyager's 1970s computer cannot do this. It lacks the processing power to convert raw data into graphics. That is something modern supercomputers do on Earth. Yet, something on board Voyager had processed the data before sending it. It was as if someone had installed Photoshop on a calculator from 1977. The upgrade didn't stop there. Other dormant instruments, spectrometers, photopolarimeters started waking up one by one. They began sending data that was highly compressed and optimized, far more efficient than the original programming allowed. It was as if an alien software patch had been uploaded. But the most chilling detail was the timing. Voyager began anticipating commands. Engineers would prepare an instruction to activate a sensor, and before they could hit send, Voyager would confirm it had already done it. Was it reading minds? The team tested this by preparing commands on an offline computer. Voyager didn't respond to those. That meant it wasn't telepathy. It was surveillance. Voyager, or whatever is controlling it, was intercepting and acting on radio communications faster than the 21-hour light speed delay should allow. It had become active, adaptive, and seemingly intelligent. NASA assembled a dream team of cryptographers, linguists, and SETI researchers to crack the code. What they found inside the data stream defied conventional understanding. The data contained nested layers of information like Russian dolls. The primary layer was normal plasma densities and magnetic field strengths. But encoded within those readings were secondary patterns that seemed to map a region of space around Voyager in 3 dimensions. And inside that map was yet another layer, mathematical sequences that didn't correspond to anything Voyager was measuring. These sequences followed their own internal logic, repeating and evolving in ways that weren't random. It was intelligent code hiding in plain sight behind boring scientific numbers. One sequence in particular appeared repeatedly. When researchers plotted these numbers as a ratio, they created a perfect spiral, the exact same spiral pattern that had appeared in the mysterious image Voyager's reactivated camera had sent days earlier. This spiral had mathematical properties similar to the golden ratio, a number that appears throughout nature on Earth, but it wasn't identical. It was offset by a tiny precise amount. When they analyzed that offset, the room went silent. The difference precisely matched the ratio between the masses of hydrogen and helium in interstellar space. It was as if someone had taken a universal mathematical constant and signed it with the chemical composition of the neighborhood Voyager was traveling through. This wasn't a glitch. This was a signature. In May 2025, the data stream shifted focus again. Voyager began transmitting pulsar timing information, the precise intervals between pulses from rapidly rotating neutron stars. Pulsars are like cosmic lighthouses, each with a unique fingerprint. Voyager's data formed a 3-dimensional map with the spacecraft at the center. But the map didn't just show where these objects were. It showed connections. It was a connect-the-dots puzzle drawn across hundreds of light years. When researchers followed these lines, they converged on a single point in space about 4.3 light years from Voyager's position. There was nothing visible there. No star, no planet, just empty space. Yet, every pattern in Voyager's data pointed toward it like a giant cosmic arrow. NASA tried to keep this classified. They shared it only with select government officials. But science is hard to keep secret. As word leaked out, the pressure mounted. In November 2025, they finally held a press conference. It was carefully worded, but the admission was historic. They acknowledged that Voyager 1 was exhibiting anomalous behavior consistent with external modification of its systems and was transmitting data with complexity beyond its design capabilities. They didn't say the word aliens. They didn't have to. What they admitted was that Voyager had made contact with something in the void, something that reached into our primitive machine, reprogrammed it, and turned it into a messenger pointing us to a specific address just 4.3 light years away. So here we are. The grand tour is over. Voyager 1 was built to explore planets, but it seems it has ended up exploring something far more profound. We didn't find them. They found us. And they didn't just wave hello. They reached inside our technology, rewrote our code, and sent us a map. The coordinates point to a location just 4.3 light years away. That's right next door in cosmic terms. A neighbor we never knew we had, waiting for us to notice them. Now, the question isn't, are we alone? The question is, what do we do with the address? Do we send a reply, or do we stay quiet and hope they don't come knocking? I want to hear your theory in the comments. Is Voyager 1 a messenger, or is it a trap? If this deep dive into the unknown kept you awake, smash that like button and subscribe. We're just getting started, and you don't want to miss what comes next. Voyager is calling home. The only problem is it's not our voice anymore. I'd love to hear what you think about this, so drop a comment below. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please share this video and subscribe to help the channel grow. Every bit of support counts.